Since God knowingly sent his son to die, does that mean God murdered his son? Or should it be considered a suicide since the Son is really the Father, who's also the Holy Spirit, who's also the Son, who's also the Father?
On the single condition that you identify the body or the living person of the slave called Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is hiding from the storm. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cat. Get over it. If you happen to like the podcast, you can follow it on Twitter. TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle, and it's also on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes for this and most other episodes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. Don't forget to rate the show on iTunes. This is a Bible Myths episode where I read a chapter or two from T.W. Doan's Bible Myths and Their Parallels in Other Religions. Next episode will be a news episode, and you may hear some loud bangs or the sound of the storm. It's been raining off and on pretty heavy here today. I got up this morning planning on finishing the front steps to the deck, and shortly after I got everything set up and started working on it, it began to rain, so I had to rush and tear everything down and get all the power tools inside where I wouldn't have to worry about getting electrocuted. And then it cleared up and went back out, started working, and thought to myself, hey, I may actually be able to get this done today. I've only got a few more things to do and it'll be all finished. And then half an hour later I looked up and noticed that it was awfully dark in the southern sky and realized, fuck, it's going to rain hard. So I had to race around, put everything back up, and because of the rain, I may be actually pushed behind. Some of the stuff that I did requires a few hours to set up and cure before it can get wet. Well, I covered it up as best I could, but it's still no doubt gotten rained on, so I won't be able to tell until tomorrow at the earliest what kind of shape it's in. Hopefully it didn't get screwed up too bad. More concerning is that we have critically low levels of bourbon in the house, and without a car I don't dare walk the 2 miles or so to the nearest liquor store with it pouring down rain, and thanks to the religious fuckwads, they don't sell hard alcohol in this state in stores on Sundays. So I'll do my best to muddle through this evening and tomorrow evening without it, but it's just kind of frustrating and annoying. Okay, and before I get to reading from Bible Myths, I wanted to slightly toot my own horn. As I said, when I upgraded the package, I got access to stats, which I didn't have, and I'm pleased to notice that the numbers are still going up, which means I haven't quite managed to succeed in driving everybody away. The more surprising thing is that the country in second place now is not Australia, like it was last time, or Canada. It's Kenya, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know if it's an expat situation or if it's actual native Kenyans listening. I know it's silly in the fact, since we've had the internet, broad general access for 20-odd years now, but I still think it's pretty freaking cool that somebody on the other side of the planet is listening to my voice. It's rather remarkable. We truly live in an age of wonders. Okay. Another thing I want to say is that as far as U.S. downloads go, I couldn't help but notice Ohio and Michigan are tied, and speaking as somebody who grew up in the Buckeye State, I'm a little offended by that, and I expect my fellow Ohioans to step up and get their friends to download. Can't allow the Michigan to beat us. Damn it. I grew up in Ohio during the Woody Hayes era, and by God, when it came time for the OSU-Michigan football game, they boarded up High Street. It was like a war zone. But enough blathering about that. To rattle off some of the countries that have downloaded since the last episode, just because I find it so interesting. We got Spain, the Philippines. I'm trying to find the next. Spain, the Philippines. Come on, load the link. Denmark, I don't know if I mentioned that or not last time. Malaysia, Madagascar, I believe both of those. Germany, but yeah, it's just neat. Enough of the shameless self-promotion. I got a nice email from one of the listeners in Taiwan who gave a bit of discussion about. He sent me a bit of a description about his area and the secular groups that he started, and I thought I would read that part of the email. He didn't give me his name, so I don't know if he did give me his name, but he didn't specifically say I had permission to read his name out on the podcast. So I won't do that unless he sends me another email saying, hey, yeah, go ahead. But he did say I could read this section about the groups that he started in Taiwan. So I will read that. I have started 2 rational and free thought groups in the 3rd largest city in Taiwan, Taichung. The first is Taichung Skeptics in the Pub, a monthly meeting of skeptics who promote rational thought and scientific inquiry, all in a relaxed pub atmosphere. The second is Taichung Atheists, Free Thinkers, and Humanists, a group for the godless in Taichung and Taiwan. Taiwan is a very pluralistic society. As such, it is actually very open to people following their own religious path, including atheism. That doesn't mean there is no need for an organized free thought movement in Taiwan. First of all, groups like ours can make it easier for other atheists to be open about their atheism. While Taiwanese society is open to the existence of atheists, hey, that puts them ahead of Tennessee. Oops. That doesn't mean people are, and I have heard atheist friends voice their concerns about being open about their atheism with their Christian employers, and that was my botch for reading that wrong. He actually wrote it more articulately than I expressed. And I even haven't had anything to drink today. We can help to show that atheists are good people and that it's okay to be open and honest about who you are. Secondly, as atheists and humanists, we are uniquely able to respond to religious intrusions into government and violations of human rights. Taiwan is no stranger to religious bigotry against gays, Christian-funded, quote, women's health, unquote, organizations, and proselytizing on the street and even in the classroom. Hopefully we can provide balance against said groups and influences. Okay, I'd like to thank the emailer for that. I found it interesting because, while I do have some knowledge of that part of the world, I certainly don't have as much as somebody who's actually there. So it's nice to hear details like that. Anybody else who wants to provide an overview of what it's like in their area, feel free to email me, and I'll be more than happy to read it on the podcast if you so desire. I'm actually going to cut my blathering at this point short, because this is going to be a rather long episode just reading from that particular chapter. So since I don't like it when these things run more than an hour, I'm going to awkwardly cut it off here and get to reading from Bible Myths. Bible Myths and Their Parallels in Other Religions is a work written in the late 1800s which attempts to show that many of the stories in the Bible did not originate with the Bible and in fact, predate it by a number of centuries. So far as I know, biblical scholarship has generally confirmed that Doane was right about what he wrote, and much of what he says raises rather pointed questions about the Bible and the religions it has influenced over the centuries. You do not need to listen to previous episodes to understand what's going on, but you can download previous episodes at trailerparkatheist.libsyn.com. You can find a free digital version of the book at books.google.com or at archive.org or gutenberg.org. Now, on to the book. This is chapter 8, which is Samson and his exploits. This Israelite hero is said to have been born at a time when the children of Israel were in the hands of the Philistines. His mother, who had been barren for a number of years, is entertained by an angel, bow chicka wow wow, who informs her that she shall conceive and bear a son. Footnote 1. The idea of a woman conceiving and bearing a son in her old age seems to have been a Hebrew peculiarity, as a number of their remarkable personages were born, so it is said, of parents well advanced in years, or of a woman who was supposed to have been barren. As illustrations, we may mention this case of Samson and that of Joseph, being born of Rachel, the beautiful Rachel, who was so much beloved by Jacob, her husband, was barren, and she... That's a hell of a long footnote. Scroll. Okay. And she bore him no sons. This caused grief and discontent on her part, and anger on the part of her husband. In her old age, however, she bore the wonderful child Joseph. See Genesis 30, verses 1 to 29. Isaac was born of a woman, Sarah, who had been barren many years. An angel appeared to her when her lord Abraham was 90 years old and 9, and informed her that she would conceive and bear a son. See Genesis 16. Samuel, the holy man, was also born of a woman, Hannah, who had been barren many years. In grief, she prayed to the Lord for a child, and was finally comforted by receiving her wish. See 1 Samuel chapter 1, verses 1 to 20. John the Baptist was also a miraculously conceived infant. His mother, Elizabeth, bore him in her old age. An angel also informed her and her husband, Zechariah, that this event would take place. See Luke chapter 1, verses 1 to 25. Now, I want to interject something here. There is a great movie. It's awfully hard to find. The film is Salome's Last Dance, directed by Ken Russell. And it's about... what's his name? I can't think. Hang on, you've got the interwebs. Gay Irish poet Oscar Wilde. Thank you. It's about Oscar Wilde, one of his plays being put on, and I guess it's Salome's Last Dance. I don't remember. Anyways, they're acting out the play. It's a meta kind of film. You see Oscar Wilde, and then you see the play. And the film drifts between the play being reality and then just being a play on stage. It's a neat film. Anyways, there's this one gal, the Salome, and she's always saying, "I will kiss your lips, John the Baptist." And anytime I hear John the Baptist, that's all I can think of. I will kiss your lips, John the Baptist. And it's really surreal because, like, not most, but a good portion of the play, John the Baptist is in this pit in the stage that just smoke and colored lights come out of while he says, really weird, rambling, incoherent comments that make very little sense at all. It's well worth checking out if you can find it on video. Okay, back to that ginormous footnote. Okay. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was born of a woman, Anna, who was old and stricken in years, and who had been barren all her life. An angel appeared to Anna and her husband, Joachim, and told them what was about to take place. See the Gospel of Mary, Apocalyptica. Thus we see that the idea of a wonderful child being born of a woman who had passed the age which nature had destined for her to bear children, and who had been barren all her life, was a favorite one among the Hebrews. The idea that the ancestors of a race lived to a fabulous old age is also a familiar one among the ancients. Most ancient nations relate in their fables that their ancestors lived to be very old men. For instance, the Persian patriarch Kaiomaras, Kaiomaras, reigned 560 years. Jemshid, Jemshid, reigned 300 years. Jamarash, Jahmurash, reigned 700 years. Dahak reigned 1,000 years. Feridun reigned 120 years. Manugeher, Manugheher, reigned 500 years. Kaikans, Kaikans, reigned 150 years, and Bahaman reigned 112 years. See Dunlap, Son of Man, page 155, note. Okay. You just click over to the next page and make sure that's the end of that damned footnote. Yep. So let's go back and find out where the hell we were in the text. Wow. That was like in the middle of a sentence, and since it's probably been like 20 minutes and you've now forgotten what the hell that sentence was, I'm going to start it all over again. Actually, it's the second sentence of the damn opening paragraph, so I'm going to just reread that. This Israelite hero is said to have been born at a time when the children of Israel were in the hands of the Philistines. His mother, who had been barren for a number of years, is entertained by an angel, who informs her that she shall conceive and bear a son, and that the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. According to the prediction of the angel, the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And Samson, after he had grown to man's estate, went down to Timnath, and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother, and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me to wife. Samson's father and mother preferred that he should take a woman among the daughters of their own tribe. But Samson wished for the maid of the Philistines, for, said he, she pleaseth me well. I wish I could do John Wayne. If you've ever seen The Conqueror, which is like a horrible movie, John Wayne plays Genghis Khan. John Wayne was 6'5", Genghis Khan was like what, 4'6", 4'8", 4'12", something, or 4'9". It really doesn't work. But there's a scene where he's like, my blood burns for that Tartar woman. Sorry. Okay. back to the text. The parents, after coming to the conclusion that it was the will of the Lord that he should marry the maid of the Philistines, consented. Then went Samson down, and his father and his mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him, Samson, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And he rent him, the lion, as he would have rent a kid. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And he had nothing in his hand. This was Samson's first exploit, which he had not told to anyone, not even his father or his mother. He then continued on his way, and went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased him well. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And after a time he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. That's just gross. Samson made a feast at his wedding, which lasted for 7 days. At this feast there were brought 30 companions to be with him, unto whom he said, I will now put forth a riddle unto you. If ye can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. But if ye cannot declare it me, then shall ye give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. Well, if you sheet your garments 30 times, you do need to change them a bunch. Sorry. And he said unto them, Put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it. And he answered them, And they said unto him, Put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it. And he answered them, Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. This riddle the 30 companions could not solve. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said unto Samson's wife, Entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle. She accordingly went to Samson, and told him that he could not love her. If it were so, he would tell her the answer to the riddle. After she had wept and entreated of him, he finally told her, and she gave the answer to the children of her people. And the men of the city said unto him on the 7th day, before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? Samson, upon hearing this, suspected how they managed to find out the answer. Whereupon he said unto them, If ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. Just a note, because it's italicized. All the mentions of 7 here are italicized. And if you're not listening to the earlier episodes, one thing you would have missed is the explanation given for why 7 is so important, not only to Christianity but other religions. That 7 is derived from the number of celestial objects. You've got the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, and the Mars, Venus, Mercury, whatever other planets visible to the naked eye. Jupiter? Yeah, Jupiter. I think that's right. That's how it is. Anyways, it is discussed in... Let me pull the episode up because I don't remember. It's discussed in episode 4. Baby Kellen, Tall Towers, and Big Dicks, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not that, then it's probably in 3. But I think I'm almost certain it's in 4. Okay. Back to the text now. Samson was then at a loss to know where to get the 30 sheets and the 30 changes of garments. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And he went down to Ashkelon, and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle. Okay, so in other words, Samson brags, gets his ass in trouble, doesn't realize his wife's a deceitful bitch who cons the answer to the riddle out of him. So then Samson's like, well, shit, now I got to pay up. What do I do? And rather than, God just magically appearing the garments, etc., that Samson promised, God tells Samson, go over there, kill some bastards, take their shit. That's what you call a compassionate God, isn't it? Okay, back to the text. This was the hero's second exploit. His anger being kindled, he went up to his father's house instead of returning to his wife. But it came to pass that, after a while, Samson repented of his actions and returned to his wife's house and wished to go into his wife in the chamber, but her father would not suffer him to go. And her father said, I verily thought that thou hast utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. This did not seem to please Samson, who, even though the younger was fairer than the older, for he went and caught 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the midst of the between two tails, and when he had set the brands on fire, let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines, burned up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives. And those of you who are Americans may not know this, but corn is actually the generic word the rest of the English-speaking world uses for grain, whereas we Americans know it as what everybody else calls maize. So, this isn't a mistake like in the Book of Mormon where they have horses in the Americas when, of course, there were none until the Europeans arrived. So anyways, I just thought I'd put that in there. This was Samson's third exploit. When the Philistines found their corn, their vineyards, and their olives burned, they said, Who hath done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timonite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Fire, 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 fire! And Samson said unto them, Though ye have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. This great slaughter was Samson's fourth exploit. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah, and spread themselves in Lehi. I guess that's how it's pronounced, Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why are ye come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson are we come up, and to do to him as he hath done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went up to the top of the rock Etam, and said to Samson, Knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, As they did unto me, so I have done unto them. And they said unto him, We are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, Swear unto me that ye will not fall upon me yourselves. And they spake unto him, saying, No, but we will bind thee fast, and deliver thee into their hands, but surely we will not kill thee. And they bound him with 2 new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he had come into Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. Bow, checka, wow, wow. And the cords that were upon his arm became as flax that was burned with fire, and his bands loosened from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men with it. I just have you remember that scene in the Blues Brothers where they're rolling around, they're trashing the shopping mall, and they look over and they're like, "Oh, Oldsmobiles are in early this year." I see that new jawbone, and that's all I can think of. This was Samson's 5th exploit. After slaying 1,000 men, he was sore athirst, and called unto the Lord. And God clave a hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water thereout. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again. Bow, chicka, wow, wow, and he revived. Then went Samson to Gaza, oh boy, and saw that there was a harlot, and went in unto her, and it was told the Gazites saying, Gazites, I guess that's how you pronounce it, saying, Samson is come hither. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And they were compassed him in. I guess that means they came at him from all directions, and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, In the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. I would just like to point out that usually, when it's morning, it is the day. If it were morning and it were the evening or the night, you'd have a problem. But anyways, sort of like that stupid Paul McCartney's Christmas song where they say, Christmas comes about this time each year. It's like, no, you fucking idiot. It comes the same time every year. It's not like Easter that hops around. No pun intended. Okay, back to wherever I was before I started babbling. And Samson lay with the harlot, bow, chicka, wow, wow, till midnight, and arose at midnight. Wait, I thought he was already aroused. Anyways, and took the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of a hill that is in Hebron. And those of you who are listening to this at some point in the far distant future, right now Gaza is in flames because the Israelis and the Palestinians still can't figure out how to get along with one another, and it's just kind of surreal, that going on in the news and reading this right now for me. This was Samson's 6th exploit. And it came to pass, drink, afterward, that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, and said unto her, Entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him. Delilah then began to entice Samson to tell her wherein his strength lay. She pressed him daily with her words, and urged him so that his soul was vexed unto death. There's a joke about women and nagging. I'm not going to make it. It's wrong. It's horrible. But anyways. Then he told her all his heart, and said unto her, There hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak, and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she went and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came upon her, and brought money in their hands for her. Kind of prefigures Judas, doesn't it? I don't remember if he mentions anything about that. Anyway. And then she made him, Samson, sleep upon her knees. That sounds uncomfortable. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. The Philistines then took him, put out his eyes, and put him in prison. And being gathered together at a great sacrifice in honor of their god Dagon, they said, Call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson, and he made them sport. And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, Suffer me that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house standeth, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld while Samson made sport. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me. I pray thee only this once, O God, that I may be once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and having regained his strength, the house fell upon the lords and upon the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Thus ended the career of the strong man of the Hebrews. That this story is a copy of the legends related of Hercules, or that they have both been copied from similar legends existing among some other nations, is too evident to be disputed. There's a footnote here. Perhaps that of Izundabar, Izdubar. Okay. And this is, for those of you who have downloaded the Google Books edition of this, I'm on page 66. It'll vary from other ones. And you can actually see the part of the gloved hand of the guy who scanned this book in. Oops. So they didn't do it all with Google bots, and this isn't the first time I've come across that in an old text. Okay, back to where the hell I was in the text. Now, many churchmen have noticed the similarity between the history of Samson and that of Hercules. In Chambers' Encyclopedia, under Samson, we read as follows: It has been matter of most contradictory speculations how far his existence is to be taken as a reality, or, in other words, what substratum of historical truth there may be in this supposed circle of popular legends, artistically rounded off in the 4 chapters of Judges which treat of him. The miraculous deeds he performed have taxed the ingenuity of many commentators, and the text has been twisted and turned in all directions to explain rationally his slaying of those prodigious numbers single-handed, his carrying the gates of Gaza in one night a distance of about 50 miles, and so on and so on. That this is simply a solar myth no one will doubt, we believe, who will take the trouble to investigate it. Professor Goldzier, who has made comparative mythology a special study, says of this story, the most complete and rounded off solar myth extant in Hebrew is that of Samson. I guess that's the Hebrew Shimshon, which I'm probably horribly butchering. A cycle of mythical conceptions fully comparable with the Greek myth of Hercules. Hebrew mythology, footnote, Hebrew mythology, page 248. Back to the main text. We shall now endeavor to ascertain if such is the case by comparing the exploits of Samson with those of Hercules. That the first wonderful act performed by Samson was, as we have seen, that of slaying a lion. This is said to have happened when he was but a youth. So, likewise, was it with Hercules. At the age of 18, he slew an enormous lion. Footnote, a manual of mythology, page 248, The Age of Fable, page, looks like 200. Back to the main text. The Valley of Nemea was infested by a terrible lion, Eurystheus, Eurystheus, ordered Hercules to bring him the skin of this monster. After using in vain his club and arrows against the lion, Hercules strangled the animal with his hands. He returned, carrying the dead lion on his shoulders, but Eurystheus was so frightened at the sight of it, and at this proof of the prodigious strength of the hero, that he ordered him to deliver the accounts of his exploits in the future outside the town. Footnote 1, Bullfinch, The Age of Fable. And you can also see, this is page 67, and you can also see the gloved hand of whomever scanned this book in. Okay. To show the courage of Hercules, it is said that he entered the cave where the lion's lair was, closed the entrance behind him, and at once grappled with the monster. Footnote, Murray, Manual of Mythology, page 249, and since I probably didn't read that previous footnote, Bullfinch, The Age of Fable, page 200. There we go. Samson is said to have torn asunder the jaws of the lion, and we find him so generally represented slaying the beast in that manner. So likewise was this the manner in which Hercules disposed of the Nemean lion. Footnote, Roman Antiquities, page 124, and Montfaucon, volume 1, plate. Wow. It's a Roman numeral, and I'm guessing it's CXXVI, so that would be, what, 76, I think? All right. The skin of the lion Hercules tore off with his fingers, and knowing it to be impenetrable, resolved to wear it henceforth. Footnote for Murray, A Manual of Mythology, page 249. Back to the main text. The statues and paintings of Hercules either represent him carrying the lion's skin over his arm, or wearing it hanging down his back, the skin of its head fitting to his crown like a cap, and the forelegs knotted under his chin. Greek and Italian mythology, this is a footnote, page 129, and Montfaucon, volume 1, page, and I guess it's 70, or page, plate, and then I'm going to call it 75 and 76. Back to the main text. Samson's next exploit was when he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men. Hercules, when returning to Thebes from the lion hunt and wearing its skin hanging from his shoulders as a sign of his success, met the heralds of the king of the Mynae coming from Orchomenos, Orchomenos, to claim the annual tribute of 100 cattle levied on Thebes. Hercules cut off the ears and noses of the heralds, bound their hands, and sent them home. Footnote, Manual of Mythology, page 247. Back to the main text. Samson's third exploit was when he caught 300 foxes and took firebrands and turned them tail to tail and put a firebrand in the midst between two tails and let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines. There is no such feature as this in the legends of Hercules. The nearest to it in resemblance is when he encounters and kills the Lernarian Hydra. During this encounter, footnote, it has many heads, one being immortal, as the storm must constantly supply new clouds, while the vapors are driven off by the sun into space. Hence the story went that although Heracles could burn away its mortal heads, as the sun burns up the clouds, still he can but hide away Is it hide or bite away? Hide away the mist or vapor itself, which at its appointed time must again darken the sky. Cox, Aryan Mythology, Volume 2, page 48. Back to the main text. During this encounter, a firebrand figures conspicuously, and the neighboring wood is set on fire. We have, however, an explanation of this portion of the legend and the following from Professor Steinthal. At the festival of Ceres held at Rome, in the month of April, a fox hunt went through the circus. Let me try that again. At the festival of Ceres held at Rome, in the month of April, a fox hunt through the circus was indulged in which burning torches were bound to the fox's tails. Okay, I get this now. What he's saying here is that in the Roman circus they had a festival and they ran foxes through the Roman circus that they were hunting. This was intended to be a symbolical reminder of the damage done to the fields by mildew, called the red fox, which was exorcised in various ways at this momentous season, the last third of April. It is the time of the dog star, at which the mildew was most to be feared. If at that time great solar heat follows too close upon the hoarfrost or dew of the cold nights, this mischief rages like a burning fox through the cornfields. Footnote: Steinthal, The Legend of Samson, page 398. See also Higgins, Anacalypsis, Volume 1, page 240, and Volney, Researches in Ancient History, page 42. Back to the main text. He also says that this is the sense of the story of the foxes which Samson caught and sent into the Philistines' fields with firebrands fastened to their tails to burn the crops. Like the lion, the fox is an animal that indicated the solar heat, being well suited for this both by its color and by its long-haired tail. Bouchard, in his Hierozoicon, Hierozoicon, observes that at this period, i.e., the last third of April, they cut the corn in Palestine in Lower Egypt, and a few days after the setting of the hydras arose the fox, in whose train or tail comes the fires or torches of the dog days, represented among the Egyptians by red marks painted on the backs of their animals. Footnote quoted by Count de Volney, Researches in Ancient History, page 42, note. Okay, now, not that I'm an astronomer by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't recall hearing about Hydra. That could be just because I'm an idiot. No, I'm an idiot. Because pulling it up here on Wikipedia says Hydra is the largest of the 88 modern constellation, so obviously that is the name by which it's known, and I'm just stupid because I don't remember it. It has a long history, having been included among the 48 constellations listed by the 2nd century astronomer Ptolemy. It is commonly represented as a water snake. It should not be confused with the similarly named constellation of Hydrus. Okay, so that's that. I'm an idiot. And back to the text. Count de Volney tells us that the inhabitants of Carseoles, Carseoles, an ancient city of Latium, every year in a religious festival burned a number of foxes with torches tied to their tails. They gave, as the reason for this whimsical ceremony, not what I would call it, that their corn had been formerly burnt by a fox whose tail a young man had fastened a bundle of lighted straw. he concludes his account of this particular religious festival, or animal cruelty, by saying, "This is exactly the story of Samson with the Philippines, but it is a Phoenician tale. Car Seol is a compound word in that tongue, signifying town of foxes. The Philistines, originally from Egypt, do not appear to have had any colonies. The Phoenicians had a great many, and it can scarcely be admitted that they borrowed this story from the Hebrews. As obscure as the Druses are in our own times, or that a simple adventure gave rise to a religious ceremony, it evidently can only be a mythological and allegorical narration. So much, then, for the foxes and firebrands." Samson's fourth exploit was when he smote the Philistines hip and thigh with great slaughter. It is related of Hercules that he had a combat with an army of centaurs, who were armed with pine sticks, rocks, axes, and so on. They flocked in wild confusion and surrounded the cave of Pholos, where Hercules was, when a violent fight ensued. Hercules was obliged to contend against this large armed force single-handed, but he came off victorious and slew a great number of them. Footnote: see Murray, Manual of Mythology, page 251. The slaughter of the centaurs by Hercules is the conquest and dispersion of the vapors by the sun as he rises in the heaven. Cox, Aryan Mythology, Volume 2, page 47. Back to the main text. Hercules also encountered and fought against an army of giants at the Phlegraean fields near Cumae. Footnote: Murray, Manual of Mythology, page 257. Samson's next wonderful exploit was when 3,000 men of Judah bound him with cords and brought him up into Lehi, when the Philistines were about to take his life. The cords with which he was bound immediately became as flax and loosened from off his hands. He then, with the jawbone of an ass, slew 1,000 Philistines. Footnote: Shamgar also slew 600 Philistines with an ox goad. See Judges 3, looks like S1, maybe it's 81, I can't tell. It is scarcely necessary to say that these weapons are the heritage of all the solar heroes, that they are found in the hands of Phoebus and Heracles, of Oedipus, Achilles, Philoctetes, Philoktetes, of Sigurd, Rustum, Indra, Isfendinjar, Isfendinjar, of Telephos, Meleagros, Theseus, Cadmos, Bellerophon, and all other slayers of noxious and fearful things. Reverend George Cox, Tales of Ancient Greece, page 27. Back to the main text. A very similar feature to this is found in the history of Hercules. He is made prisoner by the Egyptians, who wish to take his life, but while they are preparing to slay him, he breaks loose his bonds, having been tied with cords, and kills Busiris, the leader of the band, and the whole retinue. You okay, Fuzznuts? You just jump down. Footnote: see Volney, Researches in Ancient History, page 41. Higgins, Anacalypsis, Volume 1, page 239. Mount Faucon, L'Antique Expliqué, Pliquue, Volume 1, page 213, and Murray, Manual of Mythology, pages 259 to 262. Back to the main text. On another occasion, being refused shelter from a storm at Kos, he was enraged at the inhabitants and accordingly destroyed the whole town. Okay, Kos, spelled K-O-S. I wonder if that's where Daily Kos pulled their name from. In which case they expect to be slaughtered. And there's a footnote there. And I screwed up. I didn't read all of that last footnote. So let me do that before I get to the correct footnote for this sentence. It is evident that Herodotus, the Grecian historian, was somewhat of a skeptic, for he says, the Grecians say that when Hercules arrived in Egypt, the Egyptians, having crowned him with a garland, led him in procession as designing to sacrifice him to Jupiter, and that for some time he remained quiet. But when they began the preparatory ceremonies upon him at the altar, he set about defending himself and slew every one of them. Now since Hercules was but one, and besides a mere man, as they confess, how is it possible that he should slay many thousands? Herodotus, Book 2, Chapter 45. Okay, now this is the footnote that I intended to read. Murray, Manual of Mythology, page 253. Back to the main text. Samson, after he had slain 1,000 Philistines, was sore athirst, and called upon Jehovah, his Father in heaven, to succor him, whereupon water immediately gushed forth from a hollow place that was in the jawbone. Hercules, departing from the Indies, or rather Ethiopia, and conducting his army through the desert of Libya, feels a burning thirst and conjures Ihu, his father, to succor him in his danger. Instantly the celestial ram appears. Hercules follows him and arrives at a place where the ram scrapes with his foot, and there instantly comes forth a spring of water. Footnote 1. Volney, Researches in Ancient History, pages 41 and 42. In Bell's Pantheon of the Gods and Demigods of Antiquity, we read under the head of Ammon or Hammon, the name of the Egyptian Jupiter, worshipped under the figure of a ram, that Bacchus, having subdued Asia and passing with his army through the deserts of Africa, was in great want of water, but Jupiter, his father, assuming the shape of a ram, led him to a fountain, where he refreshed himself and his army. In requital of which favor, Bacchus built there a temple to Jupiter under the title of Ammon. Back to the main text. Samson's sixth exploit happened when he went to Gaza to visit a harlot. The Gazites, who wished to take his life, laid wait for him all night. But Samson left the town at midnight and took with him the gates of the city, and the 2 posts on his shoulders, and he carried them to the top of a hill some 50 miles away, and left them there. This story very much resembles that of the Pillars of Hercules, called the Gates of Cadiz. Footnote. Cadiz, ancient Gades, being situated near the mouth of the Mediterranean, the first author who mentions the Pillars of Hercules is Pindar, and he places them there. Chambers' Encyclopedia, Hercules. Entry. Back to the main text. The Pillars of Hercules was the name given by the ancients to the 2 rocks forming the entrance or gate to the Mediterranean at the Strait of Gibraltar. Footnote. See Chambers' Encyclopedia article Hercules, Corey's Ancient Fragments, page 36, note, and Bulfinch, The Age of Fable, page 201. Man, this scan is really fuzzy in spots, so it makes it hard to figure out what footnote I'm supposed to be reading. Their erection was ascribed by the Greeks to Hercules on the occasion of his journey to the kingdom of Geryon. According to one version of the story, they had been united, but Hercules tore them asunder. Figure 3, and there's an illustration here. It's a fairly simple woodcut of a guy carrying 2 columns while wearing a loincloth. Figure 3, number 3, is a representation of Hercules with the 2 posts or pillars on his shoulders, as alluded to by Count de Volnay. We have taken it from Montfalcon's L'Antique Expliqué. J.P. Lundy says of this, Hercules carrying his 2 columns to erect at the Straits of Gibraltar may have some reference to the Hebrew story. Footnote, Monumental Christianity, page 399. We think there is no doubt about it. By changing the name Hercules into Samson, the legend is complete. Sir Walter Drummond tells us in his Oedipus Judicus that Gaza signifies a goat and was the type of the sun in Capricorn. The gates of the sun were feigned by the ancient astronomers to be in Capricorn and Cancer, that is, in Gaza, from which signs the tropics are named. I didn't know that. Samson carried away the gates from Gaza to Hebron, the city of conjunction. Now Count Geblon tells us that at Cadiz, where Hercules was anciently worshipped, there was a representation of him with a gate on his shoulders. The stories of the amours of Samson with Delilah and other females are simply counterparts of those of Hercules with Omphale and Iole. Montfalcon, speaking of this, says, Nothing is better known in the fables related of Hercules than his amours with Omphale and Iole. Professor Steinhall says, The circumstance that Samson is so addicted to sexual pleasure has its origin in the remembrance of that I speak English. The circumstance that Samson is so addicted to sexual pleasure has its origins in the remembrance that the solar god is the god of fruitfulness and procreation. Wow, chicka, wow, wow. We have as examples the amours of Hercules and Omphalia, Ninus in Assyria with Semiramis, Semiramis, Samson in Philistia with Delilah, whilst among the Phoenicians, Melkart pursues Dido Anna. Footnote, The Legend of Samson, page 404. Samson is said to have had long hair. There hath not come a razor upon my head, says he, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. Now, strange as it may appear, Hercules is said to have had long hair also, and he was often represented that way in Montfalcon's L'Antique Expliqué. My apologies for mangling that French. May be seen a representation of Hercules with hair reaching almost to his waist. Almost all sun gods are represented thus. Footnote, Samson was remarkable for his long hair. The meaning of this trait in the original myth is easy to guess, and appears also from representations of the sun god amongst other peoples. These long hairs are the rays of the sun. Bible for Learners, Volume 1, page 416. The beauty of the sun's rays is signified by the golden locks of Phoebus over which no razor has ever passed, by the flowing hair which streams from the head of Cephalus and falls over the shoulders of Perseus and Bellerophon. Cox, Aryan Mythos, Volume 1, page 107. Professor Goldzier says, long locks of hair and a long beard are mythological attributes of the sun. The sun's rays are compared with locks of hair on the face or head of the sun. When the sun sets and leaves his place to the darkness, or when the powerful summer sun is succeeded by the weak rays of the winter sun, then Samson's long locks in which alone his strength lies, are cut off through the treachery of his deceitful concubine, Delilah, the languishing languid, according to the meaning of the name Delilah. The beaming Apollo, moreover, is called the Unshaven, and Minos cannot conquer the solar hero Nisos till the latter loses his golden hair. Footnote. Hebrew mythology, pages 137 and 138. Back to the main text. Through the influence of Delilah, Samson is at last made a prisoner. He tells her the secret of his strength. The 7 locks of his hair are shaven off, and his strength leaves him. The shearing of the locks of the sun must be followed by darkness and ruin. Dum dum dum. From the shoulders of Phoebus, Lycagenes, Lykegnes, flow the sacred locks over which no razor might pass, and on the head of Nisos they become a palladium invested with a mysterious power. Footnote. Cox Aryan Myths, Volume 1, page 84. Back to the main text. The long locks of hair which flow over his shoulders are taken from his head by Scylla while he is asleep, and like another Delilah, she thus delivers him and his people into the power of Minos. Footnote, Tales of Ancient Greece, page 29. Well, it's not 20 you're doing. Professor Steinthal says of Samson, his hair is a figure of increase and luxuriant fullness. In winter, when nature appears to have lost all strength, the god of growing young life has lost his hair. In the spring, the hair grows again, and nature returns to life again. Of this original conception, the Bible story still preserves a trace. Samson's hair, after being cut off, grows again, and his strength comes back with it. Footnote. The Legend of Samson, page 408. Back to the main text. Towards the end of his career, Samson's eyes are put out. Even here, the Hebrew writes with a singular fidelity to the old mythical speech. The tender light of evening is blotted out by the dark vapors. The light of the sun is quenched in gloom. Samson's eyes are put out. Oedipus, whose history resembles that of Samson and Hercules in many respects, bow, chicka, wow, wow, tears out his eyes towards the end of his career. In other words, the sun has blinded himself. Clouds and darkness have closed in about him, and the clear light is blotted out of the heaven. Cox Aryan Mythos, Volume 2, page 72. Back to the main text. The final act, Samson's death, reminds us clearly and decisively of the Phoenician Hercules, as sun god, who died at the winter solstice in the furthest west, where his 2 pillars are set up to mark the end of his wanderings. Samson also died at the 2 pillars, but in his case they are not the pillars of the world, but are only set up in the middle of a great banqueting hall. A feast was held in honor of Dagon, the fish god. The sun was in the sign of the waterman. Samson, the sun god, died. Footnote. The Legend of Samson, page 406. The ethnology of the name of Samson, as well as his adventures, are very closely connected with the solar Hercules. Samson was the name of the sun. Footnote. See Higgins' Anacalypsis, Volume 1, page 237. Goldzier, Hebrew Mythology, page 22. The Religion of Israel, page 61. The Bible for Learners, Volume 1, page 418. Volney's Ruins, page 41, and Stanley, History of the Jewish Church, where he says, his name, which Josephus interprets in the sense of strong, was still more characteristic. He was the sunny, the bright and beaming, though wayward, likeness of the great luminary. Back to the main text. In Arabic, Samson means the sun. Footnote: Higgins' Anacalypsis, Volume 1, page 237, and Volney's Researches, page 43. Note. Back to the main text. Samson had 7 locks of hair, the number of the planetary bodies. The author of the Religion of Israel, speaking of Samson, says, the story of Samson and his deeds originated in a solar myth, which was afterwards transformed by the narrator into a saga about a mighty hero and deliverer of Israel. The very name, Samson, is derived from the Hebrew word and means sun. The hero's flowing locks were originally the rays of the sun, and other traces of the old myth have been preserved. Professor Ort says, the story of Samson is simply a solar myth. In some of the features of the story, the original meaning may be traced quite clearly, but in others, the myth can no longer be recognized. The exploits of some day-night hero, such as Shamgar, who slew 600 Philistines with an axe goad, Judges 3:31, have been woven into it. The whole has been remodeled after the ideas of the prophets of later ages, and finally, it has been fitted into the framework of the period of the Judges as conceived by the writer of the book called after them. Again, he says, the myth that lies at the foundation of this story is a description of the sun's course through the 6 winter months. The god is gradually encompassed by his enemies, mist and darkness. At first he easily maintains his freedom and gives glorious proofs of his strengths, but the fetters grow stronger and stronger until at last he is robbed of his crown of rays and loses all his power and glory. Such is the sun in winter. But he has not lost his splendor forever. Gradually his strength returns. At last he reappears, and though he still seems to allow himself to be mocked, yet the power of avenging himself has returned, and in the end he triumphs over his enemies once more. Other nations beside the Hebrews and Greeks had their mighty men and lion killers. The Hindus had their Samson. His name was Bala Rama, the strong Rama. He was considered by some an incarnation of Vishnu. Footnote: Williams, Hinduism, pages 108 and 167. Captain Wilford says in Asiatic Researches, the Indian Hercules, according to Cicero, was called Belus. He is the same as Bala, the brother of Krishna, and both are conjointly worshipped at Mutra. Indeed, they are considered as one avatar or incarnation of Vishnu, or Vihanu. Yeah, there's no S in there. Vihanu. Bala is represented as a stout man with a club in his hand. He is also called Balarama. There is a Hindu legend which relates that Seva had an encounter with a tiger, whose mouth expanded like a cave and whose voice resembled thunder. He slew the monster and, like Hercules, covered himself with the skin. The Assyrians and Lydians, both Semitic nations, worshipped a sun god named Sandan or Sandan. He was also believed to be a lion killer and frequently figured struggling with the lion or standing upon the slain lion. Nineveh, too, had her mighty hero and king who slew a lion and other monsters. Layard, in his excavations, discovered a bas relief representation of this hero triumphing over the lion and the wild bull. The ancient Babylonians had a hero lion slayer. Izdubar by name. The destruction of the lion and other monsters by Izdubar is often depicted on the cylinders and engraved gems belonging to the early Babylonian monarchy. Izdubar is represented as a great or mighty man who, in the early days after the flood, destroyed wild animals and conquered a number of petty kings. Izdubar resembles the Grecian hero Hercules in other respects than as... Let me try this sentence again. Izdubar resembles the Grecian hero Hercules in other respects than as a destroyer of wild animals and so on. We are told that he wandered to the regions where gigantic composite monsters held and controlled the rising and setting sun. From these learned the road to the region of the blessed, and passing across a great waste of land, he arrived at a region where splendid trees were laden with jewels. Wow, that's an awkward sentence. He also resembles Hercules, Samson, and other solar gods in the particular of long flowing locks of hair. In the Babylonian and Assyrian sculptures, he is always represented with a marked physiognomy. Can't pronounce that word. Physiognomy, and always indicated as a man with masses of curls over his head and a large curly beard. Here, evidently, is the Babylonian legend of Hercules. He too was a wanderer, going from the furthest east to the furthest west. He crossed a great waste of land, the desert of Libya, visited the region of the blessed, where there were splendid trees laden with jewels, golden apples. The ancient Egyptians had their Hercules. According to Herodotus, he was known several thousand years before the Grecian hero of that name. This the Egyptians affirmed, and that he was born in their country. The story of Hercules was known in the island of Thasos by the Phoenician colony settled there 5 centuries before he was born. He was known in Greece. Figure number 4 is from an ancient representation of Hercules in conflict with the lion taken from Goryeo, and it looks like a vaguely human figure hugging a vaguely lion figure. Another mighty lion hero was the Grecian Bellerophon. The minstrels sang of the beauty and the great deeds of Bellerophon throughout all the land of Argos. His arm was strong in battle, his feet were swift in the chase. None that were poor and weak and the wretched feared the might of Bellerophon. To them the sight of his beautiful form brought only joy and gladness, but the proud and boastful, the slanderer and the robber, dreaded the glance of his keen eye. For a long time he fought the Solymi, Solymi, and the Amazons until all his enemies shrank from the stroke of his mighty arm and sought for mercy. The second of the principal gods of the ancient Scandinavians was named Thor, and was no less known than Odin among the Teutonic nations. The Edda calls him expressly the most valiant of the sons of Odin. He is considered the defender and avenger. He always carried a mallet, which, as often as he discharged it, returned to his hand of itself. He grasped it with gauntlets of iron, and was further possessed of a girdle which had the virtue of renewing his strength as often as was needful. It was with these formidable arms that he overthrew to the ground the monsters and giants when he was sent by the gods to oppose their enemies. He was represented of gigantic size, and as the stoutest and strongest of the gods. Thor was simply the Hercules of the northern nations. He was the sun personified. Without enumerating them, we can safely say that there was not a nation of antiquity, from the remotest east to the furthest west, that did not have its mighty hero and counterpart of Hercules and Samson. Footnote, see Volume 1 of Aryan Mythology by Reverend G.W. Cox. Besides the fabulous Hercules, the son of Jupiter, and Clemna, there was also in ancient times no warlike nation who did not boast of its own particular Hercules. Arthur Murphy, translator of Tacitus. Hang on a minute here. Okay, as you can hear, my voice is about to give out, and this has turned into a 2-hour piece. And even when I get it edited down, it's still going to be longer than I'd like. I want to keep these an hour long, so this will have to be chopped. So you'll be hearing this after a news episode has been posted. You won't be hearing this at the end of this. I don't know. I'm tired. I'm fuzzy. I may not keep the end of this. I don't know. Anyways, that's it for that chapter. There, I will have some links. I will have some links in the show notes for this episode. Don't forget, you can follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist is the show's Twitter handle, and it's also on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate the show on iTunes. The next episode will be a news episode. Say goodnight, Fuzznuts. Damn cat.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.